This exercise is called a split squat. The split squat is an excellent thing to use for people who are trying to build leg strength in, especially the quad, into some old type of injury. Now, it's a non-moving version of a lunge or forward or backwards lunge, if you will, and it's a single leg version of a squat. So I have all these tools out here because I'm going to cover in pretty good detail today ways that you can modify it. I'm also going to do regressions or progressions to make it harder, as well as different cues that we tend to use or slight positional modifications when people are having trouble with it. Now, the way that you're going to know that if you have trouble with it is you're going to feel it in the wrong areas. So this exercise is a quad dominant exercise. You're going to feel it kind of in the quad here, all right? You're not going to feel it in the knee, but some of you will. Some of you feel it in the back or the groin. That's not ideal. So ideally, exercises have what we call biased tissues. And so you're going to work the entire leg, but it's going to bias the tissue. It's going to fail first. If it doesn't fail first, then there's other things that we could consider are maybe wrong, maybe movement compensations, old injuries, and so on. So ideally, you're going to feel it in an area like this, okay? Now, the first step, again, is we're going to take a weight or not. I should start with that, with not. And you're just going to go up and down like so. Now, for a lot of people we work with, there's no problems with this at all. We ask them, hey, how do you feel? And they say, pretty good. Where do you feel it? Right in the quad here. Is it burning pretty good? Yeah. Do you have any pain? No. Perfect. Hammer these babies out. Here's a weight. You think I could do this weight? Well, let's just see. Well, you feel in the right areas? Yeah. Great. Cool. Use it. Now, that's in a green light scenario where things are feeling good. Now, what about those scenarios where people don't really feel too good? That's where our modifications come in. And as you notice already right now, I already have modification number 1, which is change in range. You don't have to do it with this change of range. Honestly, I forgot to take it out before the video. But you should be able to pick things up on and off the ground without having a support. But some of us can't. So the easiest thing to do, rather than to suffer through the range that is painful or that you can't attain, is just take it away for now. But it doesn't mean you can't. It doesn't mean you should actually rush to that range. So you should go up and act like that mat is made of glass. You can even make it higher if you want to. Now, the other thing we can do is we can allow different foot biases here. So I tend to ask people to start first with a heavy lean into the front foot, which does make it more hip dominant, not more than quad dominant. It does make it a little bit more hippy. And for a lot of people with knee issues, they end up needing a little bit of hip support too. So, whoop, being like this and going like that, you can see how my foot and back is generally pretty light, but it's helping. It's like my foot is on a thin pane of glass back there, okay? Now, some people can't take this. So we can allow more of a 50-50 split. And if you have, let's just say, imagine there's a wall in front of my face here. I'm moving away from the wall. In this other version, I'm moving up the wall. I would prefer this one. As people that do this one, they put more load in their back leg. Notice that heel is still high. It's not down, okay? The heel is always high, no matter which way you go. But the people who go this way, they tend to complain about this being super tight and it's working. Yeah, it's going to work. And that's okay. But as you start to get better at it, we're going to move into here. Okay? Now we start to add a little bit of weight. Weight can be held in one hand or another. I always start people with we call it a contra rack hold here, or a contra suitcase, contra meaning opposite, because this is mainly the working leg. So what this does is, if you imagine the weight here to there, if you have the jack of a car, the further the jack is away from the actual pivot point, the more effort goes into that location. So for a lot of people who have back or knee conditions, like if you put it in the opposite arm, it'll encourage the glute to work better, which we all know is part of what some of those corrective exercises or physical therapy exercises are. So why not marry it into your lifts? Because lifting is advanced rehab for a lot of people. Now, The funny thing is that a lot of people, even though this seems correct, their body doesn't like it. Their shoulder hurts, their foot hurts, their knee hurts, whatever. You do this, and it feels better, or doesn't, or vice versa. You can also go here, Ipsy hold. You can go here, Ipsy suitcase hold. Or you can go goblet hold. Okay? None of it's really wrong, it's just different. And when we get into a scenario where we're doing weight training or loading the body, it's really about variation that helps you offset the possibility of injury anyways. So let's just say all of these feel good for you. There's a chance that today you would do a low suitcase hold version, and then in a week you change to a rack, or maybe in a month you change to a rack, or you can make it harder by adding more weight. I have too lazy to go get another kettlebell that's heavier, but you can add more weight, okay? Nothing wrong with that. But you may notice that like certain, and I'll show you with that here in a second, but you may notice that with certain positions, that certain tissues give out more. So here, a lot of times people lose their shoulder or their posture with it. They'll dump here forward, but the cool thing is the weight trains you, helps keep you up, but also this area fails quicker. So the heavier the weight up there, maybe the quicker you'll fail in the upper body versus the target tissue. In that case, go to the lower body one maybe. Now, I always get the question, can I use dumbbells? Yeah, you can use dumbbells if you want. They're a little bit less friendly on the wrist, is why I don't choose them to demonstrate with. If you can see my wrist here, this is a 10-pound weight. The weight is vertically stacked with my wrist. My wrist is all straight, but people tend to cock their wrist back and then they complain about their wrist as their weight gets a little heavier. But there's nothing wrong with it. We can also use literally anything. You can use a baby, a dog. I've had people do this with a dog, okay? I have a dog myself. I pick the dog up like this. I go like this, and I lift her into the car and then put her in, okay? Weight is non-discriminatory. It does not matter. But whatever works best for your body, you can use. Now, those are all in the scenario where things are going well, where it's green light, it all feels good, you feel it into here, and you want to make things a little bit harder, except for the range scenario that we talked about. So, now what if that doesn't? What if things don't feel good? So, this is where we can use other things to help out, kind of like in a rehab scenario, or encourage the person to bias certain regions to feel a little bit better as they do it, and then we progress it again very quickly if we can. So I'd say one of the things that we probably talk about the most here is the foot contact. So let me make sure that all of my camera angles have the best view for you guys. And if you take a look down at my foot here, I'm going to splay my toes like so and try to lay the entire footprint down into the ground. Okay, I do mean the entire footprint, so I don't want a section of it missing. As you start to move through the exercise, you shouldn't lose toes, you shouldn't lose a heel, unless actually instructed to, which sometimes is a variant. But if we're just going through the weight training version of the exercise later, you want to have a nice full contact. Now, but sometimes what we see though is we see this odd scenario where the knee caves despite a full foot contact, okay? We can't have this. This is called knee valgus. Knee valgus is related to so many different conditions of the knee, but also the hip and the low back, and it creates power leaks amongst the legs. So I don't like to encourage people to go through heavier weights while doing this. I'd rather just try to nip it in the butt early in the training phase or even in the warm-up. So what we can do is we can do a full foot contact, act like the foot is getting very deep into the mud. So I got a lot of firm pressure here and I'm trying to push it in the mud. Now, I've realized that I want to keep the entire footprint, but I'm going to bias this outer perimeter just a little bit. What that does is it draws my knee out with it. Distal cues, or feet and hands, are the best types of cues that keep the remainder of the body engaged while trying to not disassociate different parts. So you lean in, heavy, slightly out, grab your weight if you want to, or your weight, and then you stand up and down. Okay. If you're in the infancy phase of this is already hard. I don't know if you guys can see me on camera, but I'm shaking already. So wide spread toes, bias outside. You can actually take something like here and just create a little bit of pressure down. I'm not helping too much, but it's drawing me across into that position balance-wise. And I'm pushing pretty hard into the ground here, okay? So this is what we call an isometric. And in this low phase here, my knee's barely off the mat, if that at all, and I'm already shaking like a leaf. So this is hard, and isometrics are very hard, but also they're one of the lowest risk versions of loading that you can do. And if you can't go through those other weights, certainly this is a good starting point. So this may be a version that you've been given by us. You've also maybe been given by us a heel bias, which is going to be here. So a lot of times we'll be just about here, and then same splay, same footprint, but all of a sudden things don't go right either. And so we tell the person, we put this kind of like right here on the edge, and we tell them if we take it, then they pay double, okay? So at any point in the exercise, they have to keep that forced down, but not at the expense of this knee cave. So that's something that we would be watching for. We don't expect you to watch for it, but it's something to consider. Not all cues work for all people. So I'm trying to take it out as the person, but I keep it down, and eventually you add weight to it and you carry up to it a little bit more. Okay, so those are the basics of the split squat. Now let me talk about just a few things that sometimes create, these are just like odd scenarios or other things we can actually do with it too. So ideally we want the toes all in contact back there, okay? What we don't want is this, and we don't want this, okay? So as we go through the exercise, if we've encouraged you in some of our sessions to keep some weight back, there may be a chance that we're doing it to see if we can load the toes, because we do know that people who have things like plantar fasciitis, past history of ankle injuries, or even stiffness of the toes tend to fare very well by pushing the toes in the floor in a dorsiflexed or cocked back position. A split squat is a really, really simple way to do this. So as you can see, we can use this exercise for so many different things. And even like if you have neck considerations, if you're holding the weight up, like this, and you're poking your chin forward, if you pull your chin back, it straightens up the spine and actually feels better. So just know that when we get into these advanced weight training exercises with actually, it looks like, oh, I guess I should do the landmine next. We get into these versions, you can actually make it so your rehab encompasses a lot of different things. Now, last thing is a landmine, okay? Not everybody has access to a landmine, that's okay. I'll just show you in basic form. I think a landmine is fantastic because it allows you to put a lot more weight onto this without having a more fallout. So similar scenario, I'll show you on this leg. It's going to be here, and you're just going to take a knee, okay? At the bottom, I like to calibrate a little bit of where I should be. If I'm here, I can't really push off that front foot. If I'm here, I can't really do much either. And then there's medium forward, which is just right. So it's going to be here. You notice the weight is still in a rack position as we're going up and down. So I hope that was helpful. Again, a lot of different options on the split squat. There's no one perfect way. It's just the way that works for you. And if you have any questions, reach out to us. Again, we do see people virtually and love to take them through some of those workouts when they're suffering through problems and feel like they're always having fallout associated with the exercise.